right?
To stay at home, it's very difficult. It's really very difficult. So that's when the number of cases every day is sometimes going up, sometimes going down. So we have already 2 months working from home. So our university was closed since 16th of the March.
Mhm.
So how about in Hawaii?
Yeah, it's similar. We have a, in Hawaii, we have a population of about 1 million, a bit more than that, if you count the 200,000 visitors who are there usually. And I think we have somewhere around 650 cases, confirmed cases. But there have not been any new cases that over the last 2 days. So that's, I think, some good news. The research that I'm doing right now involves in the transmission and spreading under 2 types. The first is those related to the visitors or travelers that come from infect places where there are high risk. And then the second type of modeling that we're doing is on community spread. And I think we, as an island, we've been able to distinguish between because we shut all the borders. Unlike large continental land masses, it's very difficult to do that. Whereas in Hawaii, like in Indonesia, because we're composed of islands, I think it's easier to sort of see what's going on. So we're doing some research and modeling work on that. And so I hope someday in the future I can share some of the work we're doing on this. But,
okay, sorry, Professor Widodo, since everyone is here, so we are about to start our webinar.
Okay. I want to say once again to Professor Carl Kim, because actually I have class, so I just...
Prof Widodo, wait a minute, Prof Widodo. So we designed one session for you, like you can deliver your message after we start the discussion. Okay. Okay. Okay, everyone, since everyone is here, I would like to start this webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Pak Widodo, Pak Sarwidi, Dolores, Kalkim, and Micah as well. And everyone, all the audiences. I would like to welcome you to this webinar. I didn't imagine that it would reach more than hundreds of participants. Now we have 113 participants in this room. Because initially we designed this class only for my international class, because this semester I am teaching international class, the Introduction to Disaster Management, and we only have 9 students actually. So we designed. So we are inviting Micah to our class, but then more people are interested to this program. So I was asked to make this program bigger, and that's why we decided to package the class to be a webinar like this. So yeah, it's amazing. So we have 113 participants in this room. Okay, before we start the discussion, I would like to invite Prof. Widodo to deliver a message and officially to open this webinar. Please, Pak Widodo.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, and good morning our audience in Indonesia particularly, and good afternoon for Professor Carl Kim and Dolores in Hawaii, maybe already in the afternoon time. I don't know over there. Anyway, welcome all of you to our webinar today. And like Jafar said, that our participant today is quite large. So thank you very much for your attention. So basically in Department of Civil Engineering, we have international class. So I think will be very good for next time. We will have a kind of webinar such as today. And the topic of the webinar maybe can be varies or change from time to time. So thank you very much for Professor Kalkim, Professor Dolores, and also Micah for joining our webinar today. And we expected that next time we invite Professor Kalkim and also Dolores to speak, to talk about disaster risk reduction in common. Maybe can be related also for to COVID-19, but specifically to disaster risk reduction. And because of I actually I have class in that time, so I just give a short speech for all of you. So once again, thank you very much. Welcome to our webinar, and maybe I just take a part for a while, and I'm going to leave for this webinar because I have to give a class, to give lecture in our class. Thank you very much and good luck for our webinar today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Widodo. Okay, dear participants, so our discussion today is about disaster management, specifically from the perspective of community resilience, because we have Micah here. As we know that why we address this issue, because we live in Indonesia, one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. And if you look back in the past decades, we have experienced multiple disasters. Just for example, in 2018, we have Palu Donggala earthquake and tsunami. And then in 2010, we had volcanic eruption in Yogyakarta, very near to our campus, Universitas Islam Indonesia. And 2006, we had earthquake in Bantul. In 2004, we had earthquake and tsunami in Aceh. That's only a few examples of disasters that have occurred in Indonesia. And a lot of people were internally displaced, a lot of people were injured, and even a lot of people passed away caused by disaster. And also if you consider the other loss like economic loss and also the economic disruption and also loss of life, that's, of course, disaster is a main problem in Indonesia. And that's why we try to reduce the risk of disaster by doing something like this. As we know that in the concept of disaster risk reduction, we have hazard, vulnerability, and also the capacity. By doing this webinar, we hope that we can increase the capacity of the people, the capacity of the community. So we will have like a lower disaster risk. Okay, I would like to introduce, before we get started, I would like to introduce our participant and our discussant and our speaker. Our speaker is Micah Fisher. He works at University of Hawaii at Manoa. I personally know him very well because I was one of his students. So when I was studying in University of Hawaii at Manoa, he was one of the instructors along with Professor Dolores and also Professor Kalkim. And yes, he will deliver his presentation about community resilience just in a minute. And also, I would like to introduce our discussant, Professor Sarwidi. I think everyone here has known him very well. I personally know him closely because he was my advisor or supervisor for my bachelor degree and also my master's degree. He serves, he is senior professor in this department, in Department of Civil Engineering, Universitas Islam Indonesia. He also served as executive coordinator of steering element for National Disaster Management Authority or BNPB. So I think I should stop talking and just invite our speaker and our discussant. Okay, please welcome Professor Sarwidi and Micah.
Or what? Because I unmute. Oh, okay. Could you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay, good. And yeah, I'll be the discussion, and I let Dr. Micah to present your presentation. Okay, the time is for you.
Everyone in Indonesia, good afternoon for those in Hawaii and perhaps elsewhere. I hope everyone is doing well during this fasting period, and also that everybody is healthy during the challenging times with the coronavirus that we are dealing with. It's interesting in the communication like today, we're able to do something like this. Like Jafar mentioned, designed to be a short, a small class of 9 people, and now we have over 100 participants that's gone around the world. And the University of Hawaii has worked for a long time with Universitas Islam Indonesia, the Teknik Sipil, civil engineering program. And this is just one among many of our engagements. I was helping just last week Professor Widodo with a paper. I wish him all the best. We have been doing joint lectures like this for several years. And the talk today was actually something that came out of an initiative with the Universitas Islam Indonesia. This is part of a blog post that we put together during our most recent visit with Dolores and Kem. And we wrote up this piece because we've long been talking about the relationship between the technical, the hard sciences, those studying structural engineering with the social sciences. And Jafar is a unique product of the dual degree program, and we hope that other people from the university also continue to follow up and continue to apply for this program. So today we are pursuing that conversation and moving it along. These questions about how we combine the technical and the social sciences. And that's why I have selected this topic, which gained a lot of attention when it was last presented in 2017. I just want to give a brief background about myself. I'm an affiliate faculty at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I teach classes at the Matsunaga Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. I've also taught in the past at the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. And I got my degrees from my master's in urban planning with a certificate like Jafar in disaster management and humanitarian assistance, and also have a PhD in geography and the environment. I'm currently also serving a dual position. I work at Hasanuddin University. Their department also relates to a disaster, but thinking about the broader issues of land use and land use change across Indonesia. Currently, I'm serving a position on a project, a USAID funded project, which I will talk about shortly. And it's working with the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center, and it's Carl. And those who right University, we launched a journal 5 years ago with the Scopus Web of Science Index Society. It's one of the first national journal out of Indonesia. So building of how to do research, how to do and publish research, because there's so much great research work going on in Indonesia, and we're hoping that more from experience in Indonesia. So this is just some pictures of what we've been doing. Here we are. You can see Jafar and Prof. Widodo.
That's me.
we for the last 5 years with Universitas Islam Indonesia on degree programs, but also on disaster management. And we started thinking about this issue of community resilience as part of the training we developed. And these trainings are really interesting because multi-state and presentations, because we've been doing getting community leaders, getting many.
Yeah, your voice lost, Micah. We cannot hear your voice.
I think he left the group.
Left the group?
Maybe internet connection.
Yeah,
wait a
Micah,
minute.
I think Micah in the first in the beginning said that
Yeah.
if the internet down, he will change to
Yeah.
another.
So,
So we
yeah.
can wait.
Try to have contingency. Yes. Yes. I remember now.
Can you hear me? I'm back. Sorry about that. So I was talking about, should I continue? Continue. So, trainings with multi-stake groups. Hi, Jafar. Are we all good? Just give me a.
hello, Micah. I can hear you. Okay, wait a minute. Hello, Micah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I have to switch to my phone. Can you put the PowerPoint up?
Okay, wait a minute.
Apologies for the technical difficulties.
It's okay, Micah. It's very usual problem and it's common in Indonesia also.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, as you open too many applications, sometimes also make your voice is not that good.
Yeah. So I was just giving a background. I'll keep talking. I'm on slide 4 if you can get the presentation up, Jafar.
Yeah, I'm trying
I just wanted to. Yeah, no problem. I was just talking about the project that we're currently involved in, and this is a USAID funded project. We're working with BNPB and several different consortium members. And the overall objective of this project is to work on education and training in Indonesia. So we're currently doing surveys and research, trying to learn about how disaster education and training works in Indonesia, trying to better understand what are the gaps of research, what are the needs, and trying to work with BNPB to better define what kind of priorities for training and education are going forward. So that brings me to my next slide, which is, given that I had thought that this audience was students, I wanted to talk about what what interests you about disaster management. I had envisioned that we would have a quick little discussion here about why you decided to study disaster management. And here I have some images about people doing disaster response, going to a major earthquake, and the things that we think about with disasters, like search and rescue, the types of issues that we see on TV when we talk about disasters. But I know that as civil engineering, and particularly with a big focus of earthquake, geological, and structural engineering at Universitas Islam Indonesia, your interest might be on protecting buildings. And I've really been impressed with what UII has done to work with not just larger structures, but also small structures, doing outreach, working with communities to make sure that their structures will be more resilient in the face of earthquakes in the future. This is really important work, and it's really great to see UII's focus on this. A lot of other disaster management work is geared towards things like, like these maps here, identifying risk, understanding where the exposures and the vulnerabilities are located and how that works. Or maybe your interest is to become a researcher. Here I have an image of Professor Sarwidi, or working with communities or doing modeling. A disaster is a growing field. It's growing in sophistication and interest, and it's a great field to go into, and I hope that you all think about pursuing different ways to be involved in this field. Now, I've gone through the syllabus for the international class on disaster management, and I just wanted to review a couple key concepts. These are concepts that Carl at NDPTC talks about often: the scale and in terms of geography and temporal scale of disasters. Is there a difference in how we prepare for and reduce risks of disasters for tsunamis, for example, versus climate change? And more recently, I gave a presentation to a class on disaster management a couple months ago about, how do we define a disaster? I saw in the syllabus for the international class that, you're working with the conventional definition of disaster. But I was trying to rethink that issue when I was looking at figures about, let's say, clean water. If you have lots of people or casualties from the lack of sanitation and lots of people dying every year from sanitation, do we call that a disaster? Or is disaster something simply where we see a lot of destruction all around us? And there's many ways to enter into the issues of disaster. Here we have the classical disaster cycle, from preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation, and the issues of resilience and adaptation. And you can think about disaster in terms of, before it happens, reducing risks, when it happens, after it happens, as well as the more recent innovations in disaster management that really looks at disaster risk reduction, as well as conducting vulnerability assessments. I know you have working definitions for this in your class, and also thinking about what resilience is. So I didn't want to spend too much time on that, because I know that you've been working. I'm on slide 7 now. If this is up, I know that you've been working on these issues. I didn't want to spend too much time on it today. I really want to talk about something that permeates across all issues of disaster. And when I was preparing this lecture, everybody is talking about coronavirus. And given that I'm not really a public health expert, even though there's many ways to think about the issues of coronavirus, but I think this issue that we're going to talk about today really goes across, it spans across all dimensions of disasters. And that is those that involves working with people. And I think we don't really study this aspect of disasters that much, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Next slide, slide 8. Jafar, do you have the PowerPoint up?
Still working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite huge.
Yeah, sorry. I like to have nice pictures, and I went through all my files to get lots of pictures of you and the colleagues at UII and Ibu Sri and the professors there, as well as the University of Hawaii side. I wanted to make sure that it shows how much we've been working together over the years. Yeah, maybe the size of the picture was what took my connection down when I was presenting. But anyways, I wanted to talk about these dilemmas when working with communities. And when we wrote this original blog post 3 years ago, we settled around 5 dilemmas when working with communities. And what I want you to take away from today's presentation is, we're all going to work with communities. You know, you have your requirements of KKN, the Kuliah Kerja Nyata. You have your, you may be involved in field studies or field research, but in disasters, it's very hard to do a career in disasters and not interact with the communities, particularly if disasters are so focused on making sure that we reduce vulnerabilities, particularly finding those that are most vulnerable. How are we doing, Jafar? Should I just keep going?
Yeah, just go on.
Okay, I'm on slide 9 here. Dilemma number 1. How do we present ourselves to vulnerable communities as authentic partners? And what I really wanted to focus on, especially if you're being self-reflective, if you're preparing to go to a community, which I know lots of the faculty at UII are very accustomed to working with communities. But the first thing that we generally think about is, how do we see ourselves? How do we see ourselves when we come to a community from the eyes of the community? And here you see Professor Dolores Foley in the field in Semarang when we were doing a practicum, lots of field research, engaging with people. And, you know, just thinking about how they see you, because they interact with, you know, governments, whether it's Kepala Desas, the Patluras, the Chamats, etc. They see you in a specific way. So when we enter into a community, what is the way that people view us? Do they see you as another government official? Do they see you as taking information? Do they see the information that you collect as possibly being tied to potential projects? What is it that you think that they are thinking about you when you arrive in a community? And with this dilemma, our discussions, our reflections are really that it's important to establish the expectations about roles, responsibility, and authority. It's really important to communicate and to be very clear about what you are doing in that community. In essence, it's about finding ways to make people comfortable. And here you see images of going to the communities. You know, sometimes it might be sitting off at a warung to hear other voices, because in the official forums, only the official people speak. So how do we find information about the most vulnerable is going to be negotiated about how people see us and how we are perceived in the community. How are we doing, Jafar? Slide 10.
Almost there.
We almost made it through the whole presentation without the PowerPoint. Dilemma number 2, how do we earn and maintain community trust? I think this is okay. I mean, if you are able to share the presentation, it's fine as well. People can also look at it in their own time. Dilemma number 2, how do we earn and maintain community trust? When you arrive in a community, you are part of a history. People see many types of people come to their communities. And often they have an idea about what people do when people come to the community. So are the history of engagement responsive? When the government comes and says they're going to do a program, do those programs happen? What is that relationship like? And you're likely to be seen in the same way that that the history of engagement in that community has been undertaken. And this is really tricky because when you arrive in a community, you may not know about this history. You may be misinformed. You may only know the perspectives of some people in a community. You might have the best intentions of coming and you might think that you're there to help, but sometimes I know that early researchers come to a community and they're surprised. Why is it that somebody doesn't want to talk to me? Why do they not show up to meetings or when I ask them to interview? Why are some people aggressive? You know, when we were reflecting on some of the work in communities in Hawaii, sometimes because of the history of engagement in the community, some people have to really express how much wrongdoing has been done in the past before you can really move on to the issues that you may find important. So maintaining trust is really based on listening and listening well and really hearing, even when the complaints don't make sense, why they are being said in the ways that they're being said. There's usually a reason behind that. One approach to address these issues is to really set clear expectations. For example, keeping your commitments, even about small things. If you say you're going to show up for a meeting, it's really important to show up on time. And it's really important to follow up on large commitments, especially about if you say you're going to bring information to a government official about the things that communities tell you about. It's important to follow up with them and tell them that you have also followed up on those commitments, and to be very respectful and to check back with them about that. Next slide. Dilemma number 3. Another major question, this dilemma, is what do we want from community engagement? And surprisingly, we might think we know what we want when we go to a community, but it's really important to reflect deeply about this question. We often don't think through it enough. You know, you might think you're going to find something when you arrive in a community, but sometimes the conditions are very different. The image here on the above right is Ternate and evacuations. Yeah.
I have successfully downloaded the file, so wait a minute. Which slide? Okay. Which slide is it?
I'm on slide 11.
Slide 11. Okay, wait a moment.
This is a picture of an erupting volcano in Gamalama on the island of Ternate. And we were talking about evacuation routes. Sometimes people talk about early warning systems, and you know, it's really easy in early warning systems to be prescriptive. But in both this example here in Ternate and in Manoa, when we were doing trainings, we heard about the possibility that mass evacuations could potentially be done by Gojek. So this is one of the ways, by Ojek, right? So this is one way that, you know, you can really explore ways that local knowledge can be integrated in into issues in really surprising ways. The other picture here is from Bandung. We did some community surveys in Bandung, and it's really important to explore the knowledge and expertise from a community perspective. We often come and we might think we know what's best for people, especially these communities that are regularly flooded all the time. But it turns out that people are really, really attuned to, they know very intimately what the issues are relative to flooding. So here you see a woman who's building up to the second floor. Her last means of adaptation is really to go upwards and to use her first floor as something that is just going to continue to get flooded. And we might be surprised. A lot of people who don't understand the local context might say, why don't you just move? But often people are making decisions based on the resources that they have and the possibilities that are available to them. Also, when engaging with communities, you know, vulnerability assessments often try to examine the most vulnerable. But if you're able to really connect with local communities, they're very, very attuned to who those most vulnerable people are. And being able to explore that in meaningful ways is really important. Finally, just as a principle here for this dilemma, our challenge as outsiders is to figure out questions that help better understand local knowledge and connect with their values and priorities. So if you go into addressing this dilemma with that overarching principle, then it can ease the way that we engage and we address sometimes the misperceptions when discussing with local communities. Dilemma number 4, how do we listen effectively for meaning and understanding? You know, as planners or as civil engineers, especially engineers, I know how systematic we think. We may really understand how a hazard works in terms of issues at different scales, right? The natural phenomenon of the hazard, how to think about them as it affects a community, what the risks are. And it's really important that when engaging with communities, we can't expect them to quickly think in terms of this formula, for example, V equals E times S over AC, right? If we start talking to communities like that, then we're sure to face some misunderstanding. And the way, that doesn't mean that the knowledge that local communities have are any less important or any less sophisticated, even if they're expressed in a very different ways. So when engaging with communities, it's really important to allow them to share first, even if these are stories told in ways that we think are unrelated to the issues that we think are most important. And the issue of listening is really important. Communities often want to be acknowledged, listened to, taken seriously. And when we do that, that's when we get the most, the depth of understanding. That's where most of the best learning about local community vulnerability happens. Okay, last slide, slide 13. To whom are we accountable in community engagement? What is the nature of that accountability? You know, when we work in disasters, agencies, universities, or companies, you know, they pay you to go to the communities, and there's many different expectations. There's the expectations that we fulfill our jobs, that we do our research, that we get the outputs that mobilized us to the communities in the first place. But we work in a web of formal and informal obligations. So not every obligation is related to who pays you and the outputs. These things happen in many, many different complex give and take sorts of ways. And just an overall experience, my own experiences of working in many communities over many years, is that to do things right, it really takes a long, sustained engagement. There's many constraints to doing that, but when we work with integrity, we have to continue to be attentive, to really be aware of the expectations that we are creating when we arrive somewhere, when we make promises, when we say we're doing something, as well as the obligations that we have, not only to our bosses, but also to the overall issues that are related to disaster. So those are the 5 dilemmas that I wanted to talk about today. I put them here as questions. I hope that if you go out to the research, even if some of this stuff didn't make sense to you today, that when you read these questions in the future as guiding principles, it'll allow you to reflect on your own stories and hopefully serve as a reminder to you on how important it is to focus on these issues, on noticing what's happening with communities, on really being attentive to your own communications with the community, your obligations, and how you follow up with them. So that's my very short presentation today. I wanted to have this as a back and forth. So if there's more time, it would really be great to get your own questions, even your reflections. It would be great to get your stories of how maybe your perceptions of engaging with community did not turn out like you wanted them to, or you had expected them to. So I welcome anybody who wants to share their own experiences. And with disasters, these are really, really, often very, very intense issues. When I was in Jogja after the earthquake, after the volcano eruption, and people were moving into shelters, a lot of people, and people know this story very well, people did not want to leave their homes. And I remember one conversation with somebody in the shelter who said he did not want to leave, and he said that, yes, I may die if I stay. There might be a 70% chance of me dying of staying up on the mountain, but if I leave my livelihoods, then there's a 100 chance of me not being able to make it. So the way that people calculate risk is really, really different from one place to the next. And our ability to listen and our ability to engage with communities in particular ways are really, really important whenever we're talking with vulnerable populations associated with risk and disaster. Okay, last slide. Matur nuwun.
Then sami-sami.
I'll turn it back to you now, Jafar and the committee. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope that we can have a nice discussion now.
Okay, thank you very much, Micah. It's very nice presentation, and it's very helpful for us for his experience in facing disaster management, especially the facing in 5 dilemmas, to participate, to engage in the community. Here is he applies for 5 items. That is, how do we present ourselves to vulnerable communities as authentic partners, and secondly, how do we earn and maintain community trust? Could you hear my voice?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, yeah, I continue. So the number 2 is, how do we earn and maintain community trust? And thirdly, what do we want from community engagement? Or how do we listen effectively for meaning and understanding? And lastly, the point 5, to whom are we accountable in community engagement? So all of them are already explained by Micah, although it is in brief. Yeah, that's okay. Now I would like to picture you. So in what in what place he works in the disaster management position like this. Okay, yeah. So in Indonesia, that since 2007 have a law number 24 concerning the disaster management law, that to reduce the rate to make activity mean we try to reduce the disaster risk. So any activities that we'd like to be included in the disaster management should in the aim of reducing the risk. So what is the risk here? Many formulas about risk. Yeah, the simplest thing is about hazard time sustainability here. Yeah. Is usually it's very simple, only two component. Yeah, this one. Yeah. But in BNPB in Indonesia we use three of this. Yeah. We use three of this one. Yeah. So I think Micah is working in this side, yes, the side to reduce. So try to to make the people to serve the people to rise. If there is a can solve the dilemma, and then it means that in the he is working in the vulnerability factors here. To reduce the vulnerability mean to reduce the risk here. Or maybe he also work in capacity, because this capacity also justifies of course with vulnerability. If the capacity rise, then going up, and then the risk will be going down. So this is the and he also writes that he is in climate. Yeah? So the hazard is about climate. So I'll try to picture you in the Indonesia about the what we call about the type of disaster in Indonesia according to the law number 24. Wait a second. Yes, it is. So there are three kind of disaster hazards in Indonesia: natural, not natural disaster, natural, non-natural disaster, and social disaster. Now in the COVID-19, or we call the coronavirus, we work with the we work in this deal with this non-natural disasters. Yeah, this is very new in Indonesia, because usually if people talk about a disaster, mean natural disaster. Actually, there are three type of disaster according to the law. And then if we just would like to make detail of the natural disaster, we have I myself this one to classify into three. This is because of geological dynamics, and then secondly climatological process, and the third is about the combination. So the third is combination between the geological process and climatological process. Okay, and then there are many disasters that cause of the geological dynamics. For example, is earthquake, volcano, tsunami. So actually, that in UIA we for most in earthquake here, although volcano also we do also because close to Merapi. Yes, still many areas here to be involved in the research area or in UIA, or either in collaboration with maybe Hawaii at Manoa, University of Hawaii at Manoa. We still have so many things like what Micah told us. A lot of things that we can explore about the issues in disaster management. Okay, next. And what is different before having the law and after having the law? Actually, that there is a difference. We work at this at NOE. We trying change that there are old paradigm and new paradigm in disaster management in Indonesia. Before having the law that we have a disaster management is incidentally focused on emergency and sector. So also we done disaster management by sporadically. After the disaster management law having published, yeah, episode in the publics here, and we have we are going to the new paradigm. That is, disaster management should be anticipative. That's why we use the disaster risk reduction approach and comprehensive. Yeah, comprehensive, like Micah told us that comprehensive means there is a pre, during, and after disaster, a cyclic, cyclic, and then should be integrated and systematic. That is easy to talk, but now after 13 years of the law, even the people like to focus on emergency response compared to the pre-disaster. So it's very, sometimes in government also it's not easy to get the budget to go to pre-disaster. So the people like to have, if there is a disaster, and then we have to after disaster. So we actually that we are late. But little by little now already, the community has a group of people who is very conscious, so aware of disaster issues here. And lastly, and last year, and President taught us in a big meeting in Surabaya. That's by BNPB, the National Disaster Authority, along with the regional disaster authority, that having about 500 more agencies and municipality. And President taught us that the design of national or regional development has to be based on the aspect of disaster risk reduction. So these are, if we just for example, make development that is not in the aim of reducing disaster, is very deep. It look like that useless in Indonesia, but many people like that, especially when that. And my role is in how to innovate earthquake resistant house for the people. It's not easy because some people thought that it is still enjoy to live in the very much economical but prone, it's very vulnerable houses. Okay, that's all. So I would like to raise you, some of you, the audience, maybe have a question or have some opinion. I let you. Oh, okay, Pak Jafar maybe could help me to organize that one, because maybe you are better than me in.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. Could you raise hand if somebody else would like to ask?
Prof. Sarwidi, maybe you can stop sharing your PowerPoint. So.
Oh yeah, yes.
We
okay,
go back to our main. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that now?
Yeah, it's it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, please.
Okay, dear audiences, if you have any questions or you have any opinion regarding the topic of the discussion today, you may raise your hand and I will let you speak. I will unmute your microphone. Anyone?
Okay, well,
we can use the feature in Zoom, raise your hand. So just click the feature and then I'll let you to ask your questions or your opinion.
Oh yeah. Okay, so actually the participant is very many, from Sulawesi, from Kendari, from Jakarta Selatan, from East Java, Kalimantan Selatan, South Kalimantan, and totally 151 participants now. More than your expectation, Pak Jafar.
Yeah, it's beyond our expectation.
Oh, this Pak Micah.
I have Pak Adit. Okay, wait a minute.
Okay.
Okay, Pak Adit.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to ask Micah how about the how to we if we have a plan for mitigation and we want to share it with our stakeholder, for example, for the government itself, how do we, what is it called, pursue it, or how do we can um, give some advice for them? Because in if I've not mistaken, Prof. Sarwidi, before 2006 disaster in Yogyakarta, he has already announced in some of government, some of government in Yogyakarta, and but it the response is not very good. I'm sorry if I was mistaken. Um, but then, how about the system? How about the if we have some idea for mitigation, uh, we can share it with our government. I think that's my question.
Okay, Pak Micah, have you? This is the question is for Pak Micah, right? Pak Micah, do you have? Oh, I have to unmute. That okay? No, Pak Micah, you can.
Yes, thank you. I was trying to speak. I was on mute.
Okay.
I think I would really be. I don't know if your question is directed to me or Prof. Sarwidi. It would be great to hear about how that has happened. I talked about the long term. You know, if you've been working on something for 2006, working on how to communicate your message, how to share this information, is really complicated. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk about in this presentation today. We might have the perfect plans. We may have the concept for the perfect structure, but how do you get people to implement them? And I know that UEE has worked on doing research to reduce the cost of the materials, to inform people about simple techniques to improve the structures. But again, even if you know what the solution is, how you get that to lots of people and how you get the government to be able to implement those issues at a larger scale is really a really important issue. And the 5 dilemmas that I and others have come up with in this presentation today, this is exactly what we were reflecting on. Why is it that when we know the answers, people won't do it? You know, sometimes it's because of a trust issue. You know, in a lot of places, the government comes and only works with some people, or in some places, the information is not something that the communities trust. So what are the different ways that you communicate this message? And that is why it's so important to work between the technical experts and the people who work on the social side of things. This is both a technical and a social science issue, and how we innovate and be creative to be able to think about mechanisms for doing that is really interesting. And you know, there's a lot of issues that we can't anticipate, just like today. Jafar and I thought we were having a conversation with 9 people. And all of a sudden, there's 155 people. So this is an amazing thing because it just shows you how communication works these days and how fast things move, and maybe how you can influence decisions at a major scale by new ways of communicating. But even with the powers of communication technology like we have today, it still takes that trust building. It still takes addressing the 5 dilemmas that we raised here so that people feel that they are heard, that people feel that they are involved, that people trust the process, that people can also be an advocate to continue to improve upon the process in the future. So that's my overview of a response. It's the perfect question because it's exactly what we were trying to address. That's exactly what we wanted the theme of today's presentation to be. So you've really nailed it on the head. And now it would be great to turn to Prof. Sarwidi's perspective to share what the specifics of that implementation was like and what kind of communication strategies really work and how this engagement can be effective, not just for locations there, but how we can learn for other places too. Like I said at the beginning, we really want to get the great research that you are doing to be things that people reflect on other places. And that's why writing and publishing is been such a big focus of my engagement with my work with Indonesian universities. I sent a link you can see in the chat box here. This is a blog we called Learning from Disasters, and you'll see blog posts there from myself and from students from across Indonesia, from students from University of Hawaii, from Professor Carl Kim, from Professor Dolores Foley, Professor Kem Lowry, other international experts that have talked about, what are the issues about how we implement disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation specifically. How do we get those information across? You can check out the link and maybe read some of the blog posts on there to see about how we're answering that question more deeply. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Michael. Micah, yeah. I forget the not Mas Adi, Mas Adit, yeah. Adit, yes, is also my student in the postgraduate in UII. Yeah, the question is, yeah, because the problem before is very strong for the in the mindset that doing disaster management just after the disaster going on or happen. This is the problem for people. So it was very strange if we do, like me and Professor Widodo and others, having the collaboration with other countries too, with the government to raise the earthquake resistant houses. That is common houses mean affordable houses. It's not easy because the people told me that not us before. There is no earthquake here. Earthquake is just a pastime, and we hope not having earthquake. If you're ready for disaster management, you mean that you will invite the disaster like that. So it's not easy. Some of people like still in traditional. Many of the people, including very high rank official at the time. And if for example, at the time, if we told you, why you didn't spend some money to train the people to make earthquake resistant houses? It's very cheap. Then you have to make the house for them. They told me that before, no, there is no earthquake here. And I thought them. So look like that you using motorcycle and if you are not having helmet, there's problem. No, we are safe only. You don't have to helmet. But if you coming and that get accident and then I think that you just buy helmet after getting accident. That's not good like that. So we have to approach the people with many simple logic, yeah, simple logic. Because many of us, especially in universities, the terms, the language is so complicated to the people. Also, so look like that. It looks like that we are not talking to them like Pak Micah told us. Like we solve our problem. It's not solve my problem or not solve their problem. This is the problem. If we can little by little, step by step, like Pak Micah told us, that bring the people to that if we do something, it is because we do for us, not for me. That's if the message coming there, I think it will be a different response for the people. That's all my maybe additional explanation from Pak Micah to Mas Adit and others. Thank you. Yeah. Any others? question? Maybe still have time, Pak Jafar?
Of course, we still have 30 minutes for discussion.
Oh, still have long. Many meeting. Okay, right.
Prof. Parkin, please speaking, I think, Pak Jafar.
Sure. Can you hear me, or am I still on mute?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this very interesting topic. And I think Micah gave really an excellent presentation. And I think he identifies a number of very important, almost universal themes or questions that emerge within the context of working with communities that have experienced disasters. I think embedded within his presentation also is really three different types of concerns or information. And we've been trying to think about that in terms of disaster risk reduction. And the three that I would identify is there are certain knowledge, there are certain skills, and then there are certain values that come together whenever we're doing planning, whenever we're doing engineering, whenever we're doing education in the community. You know, most of you are engineers, but for those of us who are planners, I think it's useful to start with a definition of planning. And I think a most convenient one is that it's knowledge to action. What types of actions are we talking about? Sometimes they're very clear. It's rebuilding what was there before. But with some disasters, you may not necessarily want to rebuild exactly what was there before. You may want to rebuild something different. And so the pathway of getting from here to there, I think, is a very big part of working with the community. I think there are two other dilemmas that I think are tied to disasters. And I think they're implicit in what Micah has presented, but I just want to draw them out and get Micah's reaction and others' reactions to this. And the first is uncertainty. It's the management of uncertainty, especially with a big disaster. It may be so big that we really don't know the full extent of the damage that occurred, the harm that was generated, what the impacts were. And I think with some types of disasters, with complicated disasters, things that we have never seen before, things that we haven't really prepared well for, like a pandemic, there's a lot of uncertainty about what the impacts are, how long that they will last, what the duration will be, and so forth. And so I think a really critical part about this is management of uncertainty. The second thing that I think also emerges, the second dilemma in disasters, and I think this relates back to the importance of trust, to the importance of authenticity, to this whole idea of who are we accountable to, relates to values, and more specifically, conflict in values. Even in the U.S., which may seem, very like there's a common set of values, there are not. There are a lot of differences and a great deal of diversity that exists in terms of perspectives, in terms of what people think is important, where the priorities should be, where we should be investing our public resources, who should be helped first, who should be helped later. And I think addressing those sorts of value conflicts, along with managing the uncertainty, is part of this journey from knowledge to action. So those are the only other comments that I would add to Micah's really excellent presentation, and then suggest that a key to this involves the whole process of learning, not just learning in the classroom, not just learning in this polytechnic that we're trying to work on, but actually learning in institutions and organizations and communities. And we have to think about how to learn in these difficult times.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Prof. Carl. So that you add to point others for the dilemma. Yeah, we try to finish, and it is good. The dilemma is very good for us to make research, or you make other investigation how to to make a solution for both the dilemmas. This means that the problem is the opportunity for us to make a research at the topic of the research or research. Yeah. Yes. Any other question?
So I just wanted to react briefly. I think those are such important additions. Thank you, Carl, for highlighting those issues. I think the question about vulnerability right now, and we're doing some research on this. I'm doing some research and writing on this at the moment around the coronavirus. My research sites were in South Sulawesi, and I was examining how land use change was happening among rural communities. And, you know, today we're able to connect, you know, and I know that a lot of students in Indonesia are having challenges with connecting because of bandwidth, because of data, because of the costs to gain access. And right now we're doing a kind of a supply chain analysis to understand how markets are changing, how that's changing what people are growing, what are happening to the growing seasons in Indonesia, what's happening to food security issues. And one of the key questions associated with that in Indonesia is communities that don't have any access whatsoever. Are we, when we use technologies like this, when we have communication, there are places that don't have internet access that are now being completely cut off with these PSDB, the distancing regulations. We may not know disasters like Carl said, like Professor Carl said, about the scale of what's happening all around us. We may not be aware of certain communities that are being completely left out of the system, or that we're not hearing their voices. I mean, on the one hand, people who are in more remote areas might have more resilient systems. They might have their own internal adaptations that can happen. But at the same time, our markets are very much connected, and using kind of the markets as a place to do research about how we're connected and how the logistics and supply chains connect one place to the next is for me a really interesting emerging research area with this disaster that we are all experiencing right now. So I really appreciate those additional points, Professor Carl, especially about uncertainty and values, right? There's just the values are so important because, and I was really trying to, you know, raise that point in the presentation about how the values that we bring to a community may be entirely different from the way that communities see the world. And it's just really important to have ways, and those 5 questions today are really ways to remind yourself that not everybody sees the world that you do, and that all ways of seeing are important to understand, especially when we have big decision-making capabilities to connect information that gets resources to people. So really appreciate those additional points. Thank you.
Okay, good. So any other question or opinion? Maybe we still have some time, about 15 minutes.
I see Jati Mardiatno. 2 questions, please.
Oh, Pak Jati. Welcome, Pak Jati. Pak Jati, where is it? Could you find Pak Jati, Pak?
I'm trying to find Pak Jati.
Jati PPG.
Pak Jati Mardianto. And then the next will be Pak Muhammad Dika after Pak Jati.
Okay, may I, please?
Okay, Pak Jati,
Yes.
we can hear your
Yes.
voice now.
Okay, thank you. The first question is about the involvement of the informal leader in order to build the resilience of the local people. Based on your opinion, maybe to Pak Micah, yeah, how do your opinion about the importance of the informal leader for that? Yeah. And then the second question is about for the next after the COVID-19 pandemic here. So many people say about the new normal condition. Yeah. How about the community engagement program for the new normal condition in order to build the resilience of the people for disaster? Okay, can you capture my questions, please?
Yes, thank you. Excellent questions. I'll go first this time, and then I'll defer to others, Prof. Sarwidi. Informal leaders is really an important issue and goes to the heart of the presentation today. I'll give you an example. I live in Denpasar, so I'm the next island over. And at the beginning, when COVID was beginning to happen, you know, the cultural leadership here really, you know, at the beginning when people didn't understand much about COVID, people said you could never stop temple ceremonies. You could never stop people going to religious activities. The Banjar system is so strong in Bali that you can't keep people apart with these rules of social distancing. But I've been reading and I've been experiencing here the changes that have happened. The government has had a really good working relationship with these informal institutions, right? So the Banjars, the Desa Adats, these kind of institutions, and it took a lot of conversations. It took a lot of effort to be able to get that communication across. But once the informal leaders had buy-in and understood the risks and understood how that would affect communities here, Bali has been one of the most effective implementers of social distancing without implementing draconian measures. So for basically people still have the ability to move, but that there's this informal understanding, and the communication because of those cultural institutions has been especially fast. At least that's what the research is saying, the early research is saying, and that's what my experiences have been here. So it's a real lesson about how formal institutions work through the systems of authority that are in place. I'll just give you another example that I like to talk about a lot with informal institutions is solid waste management. I've been working on infrastructure issues in Indonesia for a really long time. And why have we not been able to do a better job of dealing with trash management? And a big reason for that is similar to the history of the United States of who controlled solid waste management, is that there's incentives that we do not see, that if you try to put in place a new system to change the effectiveness of how it works, we can throw a plan at how to deal with trash. It's very easy to do, right? The technical side of it is very sophisticated, but very easy to implement. But it can't be implemented because there are so many vested interests. There's so much money happening across the supply chain of solid waste that it's really hard to completely transform the system. So those are two examples of working with informal communities that are very different, but it highlights how important it is to work on issues of public service and the involvement of how you communicate issues to local communities. In terms of community and COVID, I think that example also speaks to your question, and
Stop.
Stop.
Michael, maybe stop there.
I think he left the group because the internet connection. I will invite him again.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe Pak Sarwidi, do you have any comment related to the next new normal condition related to the community engagement program? Yeah, because I think it's our challenge for maybe for the next several years.
Yeah. Okay, we just fill the time and waiting for Micah. They're mute.
Hi, I'm here. I'm here. I'm sorry I got cut off again.
Okay, you're up here again.
So do you want to what? Go ahead, Prof. Sarwidi, unless you want me to give some insights about the new normal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Actually, that the normal condition. Yeah. We look like my student now already happy with the online and the first time much of many of our lecture refuse to go to online classes now. I look like that they are happy because they can work from home and they can meet more people. Like my experience, I think for next engagement, yeah, use optimally the technology, of course. So the technology will guide us to the even in the conducting the disaster management. So without having good technology, maybe we will be difficult. I don't know whether it will be kept the level of high understanding in technology and the low understanding of technology in the people and remote control. But I try to even going to Indonesia that even in the remote island already the people have handphone. So I think Pak Jati, it will be good for us. Maybe we just rise engagement or what other else participation by using online as much as possible. I think
yeah, of course.
It will be more effectively and we can reach more than before. Yeah, I think my opinion is that. Any others? But Micah, maybe you will add something?
Yeah, I have some insights into that. It's a great question, and I don't think anybody knows the answer to. One thing that I've been doing that I've found really effective is to look to history, right? There's a lot of research that has looked at, what have happened in pandemics in the past? How have that created new trajectories? Even this question about when does a pandemic end, there's you can see signs that people are very fatigued with social distancing. And if people decide that they want to accept a new level of risk, then things are going to continue opening up and people are just going to live with the new norm, an additional disease that is maybe the leading cause of death in most places. Is this a risk that we're willing to accept? And that's really tied to issues of the economy. And this calculus is between the economy and public health is really intense right now. And I think the decisions that are made will have far-reaching implications. It's going to affect a lot of people in the future. These questions, the economies of these places, there's a lot of economists saying that some places will never look the same, right? It depends on this question that we talk about in resilience a lot. How quickly do you come back? And Carl's point about, are we returning to an old new normal or are we building a new future? And I think these questions of technology, just the fact that this presentation today was possible is really a testament to thinking about what might be possible in the future. So I think what it's really important to focus on now is that the decisions we make collectively now, the public decisions that are made, will have huge implications in reorganizing how society works. So I really think it's very important for us to innovate and to focus on the values questions. If there's going to be a new normal going to the future, let's make it a new normal that we all want. You know, let's try to influence the future of this new normal in a way that's rooted in our values, in a way that communicates better with people, in a way that is more attentive to what the questions about risk and vulnerability are all about. And I think having the toolkits, you know, the frameworks that Prof. Sarwidi talked about at the beginning of his lecture about how to think about disaster are really great heuristics. They're frameworks that we can really use to apply to think about what kind of planning goes into the future that we want to create. So I think a new normal is really uncertain, and it's really contingent upon what we do about it.
Thank you.
Okay, Pak Jyoti, I hope that
can
answer your questions. Okay, next question. I think Pak Muhammad Dikman, you have a question, right?
Yeah, welcome, Pak Dikman from
Kendari. Yes. Good morning, Prof. Sarwidi. Good morning, Micah. Thanks for the nice presentation from Micah and Prof. Sarwidi. And thank you for the committee of this meeting to give a chance to me to give a comment and some questions. My first question is going to Micah. We all realize that actually we have many dilemmas when dealing with the community. And then you are talking about the 5 dilemmas. So could you share to us how do you assess or how do you know that one of your dilemma is not there? How do you know that the dilemma is less? Because it's important, because it's kind of a monitoring of the process to decide what kind of activity to go through to your activity. And for Professor Sarwidi, I'm really interested with the direction from the Mr. President that our national and regional development should be based on the disaster management. So my question is how, in your opinion, how do we, how do you assess or how do you assess that the regional development, let's say from the regency or kabupaten or from the provincial is taking into consideration the disaster management in their area, or what are indicators that can be used? Because if you talk about the regional development, we are talking about the complexity. There are many things. We can see from the, let's say, how the disaster management, how the prone area already considered in the land use planning, for example, or how much local budget are provided for disaster management activities. So those 2 questions from me, one from Micah and one from Professor Sarwidi. Thank you very much.
Okay, Pak Micah, this is your turn.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Great question. It's the question I'm sort of hoping for. And greetings to you in Kendari. I've always wanted to go to Southeast Sulawesi. I know that you've had some issues in the province there with bad flooding last year, and it would be really interesting to learn more about the sources of that disaster. I did my research in Bulukumba, and I always wanted to take the ferry across from Teluk Bone over to your areas over there. Anyways, I'm really happy you asked that question. And the reason that I frame them as dilemmas is because they don't have answers, right? This isn't like, this is a theory, it's a framework to think, but there's not necessarily the right way to do something. And every single one of the dilemmas is posed as a question. So the way that I envisioned today, what I wanted to do with today's presentation was to give to you as technical experts, as civil engineers, as people working on disasters, you know, if you're getting ready to go to a community, to prepare a presentation, to do a pre-assessment of doing a presentation, to deliver resources to a community, why not just put these 5 questions up? You know, if you work in teams, it would be great to sit down and think about, you know, how do you see these questions playing out? How do you listen? How do you, you know, in a lot of the work that I do, the preparation is so important, right? If you're going to go to a community and have a local training, especially the trainings that we did, the multi-stakeholder, we spend days beforehand. We spend days going to the community, staying with local people, understanding what the issues are, going to doing field visits before we do any presentations. That way, we really are able to tailor the trainings for the local needs. And I think providing opportunities to really listen before you start explaining is a really important way for assessing, you know, how to what extent these 5 dilemmas have been addressed. But again, these are, you know, working with communities takes continued engagement. It's about trust, and it's really important to continue to come back to these questions, and also to really know your audience when you're talking to them. So I hope that is helpful, and I hope that it helps everyone here to think about maybe revisiting these questions when they're thinking about or are forced to work with communities.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I would like to continue to answer maybe some of the question of Dr. Dikman. Yeah. Okay, and actually the role of universities is very crucial. It could be pressed to the government that, for example, in these issues of disaster management, you make issues them and then so make study and present to the government as well as to the people by using medsos usually now, because medsos are reaching more than on the conventional newspapers, for example, or television even. Yeah, and secondly, it is better from universities, academicians also to form some book like community disaster risk, yeah? To make a forum for community in disaster risk management. It also good because actually in the solving the disaster management in the field, that better for us to have a concept of bottom up, right? Because when the people still have a mindset that it could become from up down and top down, it's just wrong in the disaster, for example, in emergency, because the people itself could have the people around them that could sort themselves. It was not government. The government come usually later, yeah? Because some of the government officials also the people who get also victim of disaster too. So actually, it is better we try to insist to the people to start by having a mindset of bottom up and giving the research data about 65% of the survivor come from the people itself. Even only about 5% or 10% be helped by other people from outside of the areas like the Batikman. Yeah. So first, the academician should go by using directly raise the issues of disaster management and to have giving the option to solve the problem, and secondly to form a community forum for disaster risk reduction. Yes, thank you. Yet any other time, Pak Jafar?
We have about 5 minutes, Prof. Sarwidi.
Okay, 5 minutes more. If any, if one question is still okay, I think. Please raise your question.
Any other questions, everyone?
Or maybe you try to summarize, Pak Jafar. 5 minutes.
I want to just jump in. It's really great to see everybody here, and I appreciate how creative people are for these kind of meetings. It's great to see people in outer space at the Great Wall of China, at the beach, at the airport. I mean, it's so cool, and I really hope that we have an opportunity to meet in person before too soon. It's really great to see everybody's faces and know that so many people are involved, and I hope that today's presentation was meaningful in some sort of way, and I hope it helps to deepen your interest in disaster management. I think what Jafar has put together, I really enjoyed your syllabus. All the key concepts are there, and it's really great to know that our alumni from the DMHA program are bringing these concepts back into their own classrooms, and I really hope that this is a collaboration that continues to proceed in the longer term. So I really appreciate your continued commitment to working together. Thank you, Jafar.
Yeah, you're welcome, Micah. Okay, dear audiences, I think we come to the end of this webinar because we planned this webinar up to 10:30 and it's almost 10:30. It's 10:29. Okay, I would like to thank to our speaker and our participants, and also our discussant, Professor Sarwidi, and also Micah, for delivering an interesting topic and also informative discussion. And I'm sure everyone in this room has gained a lot of knowledge, insights, and also understanding regarding disaster. And also thank you very much for Prof. Carl Kim and Dolores. Yeah, as Micah has mentioned before, that Universitas Islam Indonesia and University of Hawaii at Manoa has a really close relationship, and we have been working in many projects in disaster management. And yeah, it's almost 10 years, the collaboration between these two universities. And I am really happy, and I feel like honored to be able to join the double degree program between University of Hawaii at Manoa and Universitas Islam Indonesia. That's a really great experience for me personally, so I enjoy that. So I try to bring what I got from the University of Hawaii at Manoa to my students in my class, and by inviting my former instructor like Micah or Prof. Kim and also Dolores, I believe it will give different experience to my students, especially for my international class students and also my students in general. So hopefully we can invite more speaker or expert from disaster management. Maybe Prof. Kim or Dolores for the next webinar. We can arrange that later, I think. Okay, dear participants, we finally come to the end of this webinar. I would like to thank all of the participants. Thank you very much for your participation and for your active, for your attention, in this webinar. I hope you enjoy this program, and once again, thank you very much. So I would like to close this webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And also, okay, because the session has already closed, I would like to change into Bahasa because I have a message from the head of the Master Program of Civil Engineering, Bu Fitri. Oke, baik teman-teman, kepada audiens semua ya, ini ada titipan informasi dari Bu Kaprodi jurusan Magister, bahwa kalau misalkan ada teman-teman yang berminat atau atau ingin bergabung di program Magister Teknik Sipil, nanti bisa silakan bergabung di bisa buka di websitenya. Pendaftaran jilid 2 ini sekali lagi dibuka sekarang sampai bulan Juli 2020. Nanti ada tes bahasa Inggris, kemudian ada juga tapi tes bahasa Inggris di sini bukan untuk penerimaan ya, nanti untuk melihat kemampuan berbahasanya. Kemudian nanti bisa langsung menghubungi atau bisa membuka di websitenya. Dan program ini seperti yang saya bilang tadi sebelumnya memungkinkan untuk mahasiswanya gabung di program double degree ya, seperti yang saya dulu jalani, tapi ini tidak bersifat wajib, hanya bersifat opsional. Kemudian juga di sini nanti dimungkinkan atau dibuka program profesi insinyur, profesi keinsinyuran dengan UNY. Jadi nanti bagi teman-teman yang sekiranya berminat atau ada barangkali rekan atau siapa yang ingin bergabung, boleh dipromosikan ke program Magister Teknik Sipil Universitas Islam Indonesia. Okay, once again, I would like to say thank you very much. Okay, I think Pak Widodo is here again. Pak Widodo.
Hello. How are you?
Okay, welcome back, Pak Widodo. We just closed our session, but this is a non-formal session, so we can just discuss anything in this session.
Okay. Anyway, thank you very much once again to Professor Kalkim, Professor Dolores, and also Micah for your attending of our webinar. So hopefully next time we can arrange another program and another topic because disaster risk reduction in Indonesia is right now is very important. Like Jafar said, that we have so many possibility of natural disaster, but now we have COVID-19 is natural disaster, human, not human. Yeah, this is kind of SARS and so on and so on. I don't know. Lately, we have research about the community, about the school. How do you say, Jafar?
What is it? What is it?
Oh, our research that right now is still going on.
Sorry, the disaster resilience school.
Oh yeah. Professor Kim and Professor Dolores, right now we are still conducting research in disaster school resilience. And right now, actually, the research already nearly finished. We just write down the report and writing the paper. Actually, we would like to submit our paper to International Journal of Disaster Risk Reduction. Professor Kalkim, would you like to see our draft first before we submitting to the journal? Hello.
Professor Kalkim, we cannot hear your voice. Sorry.
Already left?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Kalkim. Oh, it's not.
Send it to me. I'm happy to look it over and to provide some comments.
Oh, the voice is.
If you would like us to do the talk next week at this time, perhaps we could do something around COVID, around some of the longer term issues. I think tonight we scratched on the surface of what does the new normal or the normal look like and when that would occur, because that I think is a very interesting topic. I've been thinking about that in terms of not just the way in which we communicate, not just the way in which we do education and training, but also other things such as, community meetings, lots of concerns about travel, transportation. For us in Hawaii, the impact on tourism has been particularly significant. So I know there are both immediate short-term concerns as well as longer-term concerns about what does this disaster have to say about the density of cities, about the ways in which we manage and govern our cities. So I think there are some interesting topics to cover if you'd like to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Carl Kim.
Okay.
So may I repeat again that currently we just almost finished our research about disaster resilience school in Yogyakarta.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to submit our paper to International Journal of Disaster Risk Reduction. Could you please to see for a while, by glance, our paper before submitting to the journal, please?
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And in addition, because our department focusing on the disaster risk reduction, particularly in the earthquake resistant design, and also another S. So we just also conducting research about the Yogyakarta no so-called once again I forgot the title. Yogyakarta seismic microzonation. Yogyakarta seismic microzonation. It is possible for us to talk together in webinar, both OEE and University of Hawaii. I don't know about earthquake in Hawaii because in Yogyakarta, earthquake is very prone and very strong. If it's possible, we can talk about our experience and research in the Yogyakarta seismic microzonation.
That sounds very interesting.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you very much,
okay,
Jafar.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Jafar. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Micah.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will just...
Sebelum ditutup, Jafar, mungkin saya akan mengulangi lagi tadi yang in bahasa ya tadi ya. Ya, Bapak Ibu peserta seminar sekarang ini, jadi kita itu jurusan teknik sipil itu sudah lama mengadakan kerjasama double degree dengan University of Hawaii antara Magister Teknik Sipil, konsentrasi Magister Rekayasa Kegempaan dan University of Hawaii. Mas Jafar ini adalah salah satu produk dari double degree, jadi nanti degree-nya adalah 2, jadi dari kita dan di University of Hawaii. Jadi kalau Bapak Ibu sekalian berminat, nanti bisa mendaftar di tempat kami, bisa apply untuk double degree ini. Monggo saja silakan kalau ada mungkin pertanyaan dari Bapak Ibu sekalian peserta webinar, monggo silakan. Mungkin waktunya masih cukup nggak, Pak Mas Jafar?
Sudah ditutup sih Prof acaranya, ini tinggal acara non formalnya ini.
Just talking ya.
Oke. Nah ini pesertanya masih ada pada di situ apa enggak?
Iya.
Kalau masih ada pertanyaan silakan.
Masih banyak 155.
Ya.
Masih
154 sekarang.
Ya. Kalau ada pertanyaan monggo saja tentang hal ini.
Ya bagus kalau informasi tadi bagus untuk MRK bahwa ada 2 degree ya. Jadi kuliahnya sama, waktunya bisa sama, tapi nanti setahun di Indonesia, setahun di Amerika. Nah, nanti terus langsung dapat double degree. Jadi degree-nya dari UII dan degree-nya dari Amerika, dari universitas. Nah, itu yang jarang dimiliki di Indonesia. Yang lain Indonesia masih punya tapi bukan Amerika. Biasanya dari Australia atau dari Eropa. Tapi dari Amerika di Indonesia jarang sekali. Nah, itu kesempatan monggo masuk pertimbangan, masuk kuliah sekali pukul 2 kena. Nah, gitu ya Prof itu ya.
Ya. Nah, ini audiennya masih pada di situ apa enggak ini?
Masih ini 152.
Monggo saja kalau
tadi 160
itu
maksimum.
Hal ini monggo silakan.
Kalau itu ada terus ada 2 teman-teman kita Dr. Dikman ini juga di Kendari itu mau kerjasama di Sulawesi Tenggara riset. Prof. Widodo itu juga bagus. Ada yang dari Jawa Timur nih juga. Tadi tinggal invite, sekarang komunikasi juga mudah, tidak harus ke sana, tapi kita sudah pakai Zoom selesai, jadi nanti riset-riset bisa hemat dana ya. Jadi dengan dana yang sama, tapi kita bisa banyak risetnya gitu. Kalau sudah selesai bisa ditutup.
Itu ada yang mau bertanya apa enggak? Kalau enggak ada ya di close saja.
Iya.
Ya.
Baik, teman-teman para audiens, jika kalau nggak ada lagi udah yang mau ditanyain, kita akan close sesi webinar ini. Saya akan leave, saya akan tutup Zoom yang ini. Berarti udah cukup sih, Prof?
Yeah.
Siap, ya.
Baik, saya close. Terima kasih. Oh ya, Bu Wulan.
Oke. Untuk informasi, untuk sertifikat nanti bisa dibuka setelah baru kami buat setelah ini selesai, karena baru bisa tergenerate maksimal 1 jam setelah acara selesai baru tergenerate, sehingga sertifikat nanti mohon diakses setelah jam 1. Gitu Pak Jafar. Terima kasih.
Aksesnya lewat mana, Bulan?
Aksesnya lewat link yang saya share tadi di chat. Jadi mohon diperiksa lagi chatting saya yang di atas, atau saya share lagi ini via chat, silahkan diperhatikan ya.
Tadi sudah saya copy itu, tapi yang lain mungkin tidak tahu ya.
Iya.
Bukan betul. Jadi nanti
ini
sertifikatnya online ya. Bisa diambil online.
Oke, itu saya sudah membagikan chattingnya, silakan di copy gitu ya, silakan di copy di tempat lain, nanti kami share melalui link tersebut. Terima kasih.
Baik, Bapak Ibu sekalian, sekali lagi saya dan rekan-rekan semua dari Departemen Civil Engineering mengucapkan terima kasih atas partisipasinya dan meluangkan waktunya untuk join bersama kami. Baik, saya akhiri. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya tutup.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin.